On Tuesday, I ran into an issue where the machine group and this was showing, but it wasn't active. I wasn't able to select it. I switched over to my laptop and the demo mode, and was forgot to turn on the volume. So this lecture got recorded without any sound, and this time it wasn't intentional. So when I open this back up, it is now showing the machine group, and I've rethought how I wanted to machine this, doing a little bit more with the half-inch tool. So we're going to go through the same process, and the changes that I made to the machine and the control group. Default program number 1, sign tools sequentially, warn of duplicate tool numbers, start and increment at 1. I also believe I turned those off, so we'll see if I post if it'll have the sequence numbers in it. The aluminum 6061, those are all fitting in well. So we can select the corners, go from corner to corner. Because I drew the stock and I moved to 0, 0 in the upper left corner, if I go to all entities, that should have the same effect. Bounding box is going to give us another interface, another selection. If I go with just the all solids, it's going to stay with the size of the stock, size of the part, and all surfaces if we had surfaces. So we have our stock in place, and one of the things of note in the process of machining this, we'll probably make a few more adjustments to size to better optimize it for the material that we have and the machines, the TM mills that we're going to run this on. So that being the case, I want to start off again with the facing and the dynamic. So mill toolpath, we will go into the face operation, and we are set up for the loop and or the face. So I'm just making sure one of those is highlighted. When I pick on the face, it highlights in yellow, and we're going to set up for the tool. So I don't have a 2-inch face mill. We're going to filter, make sure that we are just mills, so we were already there. 1/2 inch flat. Tool number 1 with a spindle speed of, we'll keep that up at 4,000. And I'm not sure, like I said, if we run this in acrylic, my thought process, if I run this in acrylic, I will have a nice smooth surface, or at least a clear surface on top. And so the face operation, I will note this as optional. I may come back and suppress this out, tell it not to post. And if we're running it in aluminum, I would like a nice shiny surface there. Okay, so on the cut parameters, I'm going to keep this at dynamic. Approach distance of 50% gives us a little bit of clearance, so that when it'll still kind of plunge. We'll do it off of this face and get enough clearance that when it feeds in, it's not going to leave a little swirly on the finished face. Max step over with the 1/2 inch tool, let's bring it to 250. I have a little bit more overlap. And then stock leave on the floors goes to 0. No depth cuts, so we can just turn that one off. And the linking parameters, I'm going to stay in the absolutes, and right now it's showing at -1 inch. So not sure we're in the top plane. Since that picked, I'm going to make sure, that's one of the reasons I want to check the depth. And when it posts, we'll also go back and check that that is going to Z0. So I'm not quite sure why it came to 1 inch. I don't have anything else selected. I'm not seeing my other planes other than possibly I selected through that face. Alright, so the facing is set up. Next we're going to stay with the 1/2 inch tool, and I'm going to start cutting down in steps so I can reuse those operations. So this is going to stay with the high speed, and we'll do the dynamic mill. Since we're cutting to the stock, I don't have to select a machine region, but I do need the avoidance region. And so we'll pick at that level. and then I can, I'm not adding additional, so accept and hit OK. Alright, so dynamic mill is going to stay with the 1-inch tool. Because it's not the same operation, it doesn't keep my parameters. And this is going to, we'll put it up at plunge, and we'll call this step 1. Looking at stock, I'm not remachining or rest machining the any previous operations, so I'll bypass that one. On the cut parameters, first pass offset, don't really need. We should be from the inside out, or from the outside in. So I want to make sure to tell it from outside, and that shouldn't require a first pass offset or a feed reduction for a full width, full depth pass. Step over of 1/8 of an inch. On this one should be okay. We're only going 1/8 inch deep, and minimum tool radius of 50 thousandths should be okay. The back feed rate makes me a little nervous at 100. And stock to leave on walls, we're going to leave between 5 and 10 thousandths. So let's just make it 10 thousandths, nothing on the floor. No depth cuts. The entry motion can be helix. My Z clearance, again, I don't want to watch it doing helixes all day, or the loops getting engaged in the material. So we'll have it feed down to 30 thousandths above the part and start the ramp engagement. The helix radius on a 1/2 inch tool, let's make it 100 thousandths. That'll close it up a little bit. And then we can jump over to the link parameters. I'm still going to stay with the absolutes. And there comes that 1 inch again. So if I go to the incremental, I'm expecting it to be pretty much at that first step. So let's see if I can get it to select. There we go. And if I go over to absolute, it's still picked up -1 inch. All right, so we're going to have to look at that one since it didn't pick up the depth. See what we get. All right, so we're still at that 0 level, and I know that that step is 1/8 of an inch. So I need to still need to find out what's going on with the high-speed machining, that it's not reading the incrementals, and it wasn't doing this in 2020 either. So we'll regenerate the dirty operation. That looks good going to the face. And we're going to use basically the same parameters, maybe tighten up the step overs. But if I copy that and paste it back into the toolpath group, I can double click on those parameters. We go back to the toolpath type. We're still machining from outside to all of the stock. And my avoidance region, we'll just delete that chain out. And then I need to add another chain in. And that'll go to the second step. Right, and we accept that, and accept that. The one thing I did not check on the avoidance region is that we are arrow to the outside and in that direction. So that looks good. Tool, because we're still in the high speed, or I copied it, it's for the 4000. This is going to become step 2. Cut parameters, because we're going basically a 1/2 inch deep, I'm going to reduce the step over to 50 thousandths, and the minimum tool radius will go to 2%, 2.5% as its minimum. So diameter of the tool, percentage for movement, stock to leave on walls 10 thousandths, back feed rate of 40, should be okay. Entry motion, if we need it for the helix, again, we should be starting outside the part, so it should go pretty much like a plunge. And since we're in absolute, we'll go 625 for the depth. All right, so before I regenerate, we're going to close that one, and then we will clear the dirty operations. All right, so since it has a little complexity to it, I just have to remember not to start pushing too many buttons to get it to go. So this is going to rough out all of our material in those passes to full depth. I'll go ahead and turn the display off for that one as well. And then getting this to full depth, we're going to run a contour. And I'm leaving all of this with the 10 thousandths material so that I can do a finished pass at the, oops, I got ahead of myself there, talking. All right, so parameters, we're doing the contour, and the tool, let's stay at the 4000. I'm thinking 10 and 10 is working pretty good. This will be to depth. I'll just stay with my terminology, step 3. Cut parameters is going to be in computer because we are going to ramp it in. Plunge angle of 3 degrees. It seems a little aggressive, so we'll go back to 2 degrees. Or we could switch it back over to depth per revolution. So maybe we're going down an inch, 875 and the 6, so about 1.25 inches on the depth. If we made that 0.25 every time it comes around the part, that would be 5 passes. So let's see what that looks like. And I'm going to overrun just a little bit because I'm going to set a breakthrough amount to make sure we get past that lower edge. Stock to lead on the walls, 10 thousandths. Lead in, lead out, 1/2 inch is pretty big. So 0.1, 0.1, and 45 degrees. Transfer it all over to the exit. Breakthrough amount will go another 10 thousandths. And linking parameters then, and because this is the contour, I halfway trust the incremental. We'll stay with the absolutes just to be on the safe side. And when it generates the operation, I have to regenerate dirty since operation has 0 toolpath entities. Okay, so let's see, what did I tell it to do? It's on a ramp. And toolpath type, oh, I lost the chain geometry when I did all of that, so we're going to come back and add the chain. Select the lower edge, that looks good. We do need to check for directions, so we are in conventional to the interior, or climb to the interior. So we want to reverse the chain and change sides so that we are in climb and the exterior of the part. Okay, so let's see if we regenerate that. And so it's starting all the way at the top. Let's go back into the parameters, and we're on the linking parameters, the feed plane, and the top of stock. So if I were to make this minus 0.625, and the depth was incremental to the cut, the feed plane should still be above the part. And even if it feeds in slow linear, I can always switch the feed plane over to incremental so that it picks up that first step, or change it to, maybe minus 525, whatever we need there. Okay, one more regenerate. All right, so I have the feed down, it starts the ramp, we take the cut, and then we should be ready to set our finish passes with the 1/2 inch tool. Alright, so another contour. I don't really want to reproduce or copy that previous, so we're going to go to the first one, hit OK. We'll find the second step, goes around, hit OK, and then the last step, and hit OK. So we'll accept those. The thing that I'm always concerned with, is if it only comes up with one chain geometry, it's grouped those up. So when I look at the loops, that one looks pretty good. That one's out at the tip. That one's reversed. So that's going to be a problem on the interior of the part. One of the things with these being grouped up is that if I reverse one, so let's just reverse the chain on that one, it reverses, that reversed and kept them to the outside. So just watch the change side then, because it will change everything to the interior. And the reverse gave me the proper direction inside to cut. Okay, so we're good there. We're staying with our 1/2 inch tool, and previously I'd planned on using a longer length of cut, and doing these in steps I can get that finish to depth, and still use a 1 1/4 standard length of cut end mill. So that gives us our step. On the cut parameters, we're going to switch over to wear. I'm going to take it out of ramp so that it'll just feed to depth. No stock to leave on the walls is our finish pass. Wear tells it to turn the comp on. Lead in, lead out should still be pretty good. Breakthrough amount, well, we're doing 3 levels, so I can't have it break out 10 thousandths deep on each of those individual steps. If I had to have this on that 10 thousandths on that last pass, then I would have to make that a separate contour so I could control it individually. Linking parameters should be okay. We'll go ahead and hit alright, and we'll hide that one. And then we have our feed goes around, and last the feed goes around. Alright, so that finishes out our 1/2 inch tool. At some point I should save this. And I was going to make a quick comment. I'll put it in the reminder to self, put it in the comments at the beginning, that in the 2020 software, the SolidWorks would open. And when we go to the machine to set up our machine definition, that was when it would crash. But if we saved it and closed it and opened it back up, then it would accept the machine. So there's still some issue going on with my solid parts, maybe not everybody's, but didn't like my solid parts. So we're staying with the Parasolid file on this one. All right, so next I'm just going to finish out the pockets. So that'll just be a standard pocket. We're going to pick faces. And since that got an edge rather than the face, let's see if I can deselect that one. All right, so let's go ahead and unselect the last, and we'll make sure that we're highlighting faces. And it really wouldn't matter edges or faces as long as you're consistent. All right, so that looks pretty good. Our tool goes over to a 1/4 inch tool. And RPM will stay at the 4,000. 10 on the feed rate should be pretty good, but just in case, I'm going to lower the pockets, or lower the plunge rate, so that if it plunges into the pockets, we can kind of control that. Do the rapid retracts are okay. Cut parameters, standard pocket, stock to leave on the wall will go 0 and 0. And then the roughing pass, let's stay with the, kind of like the more spiral, and 50% step over is pretty aggressive after we plunge, so let's bring that down to 20%. 50 thousandths should be okay. Entry motion with the helix. We're going to see if we can have it start the helix just above that face. So minimum radius, let's make that say 30 thousandths, and maximum radius 100 thousandths. Z clearance of 0.03, XY clearance of 10 thousandths, so that we can stay engaged close to the part if needed. Plunge angle of 3, we're only going down 1/8 of an inch, so that shouldn't be too aggressive. And we're okay on those. Finishing, I want to start the finish at the close vicinity. We don't need to rough all the pockets. It can rough and finish in the same. We're going to turn on the wear and keep the tool down. And with the keep tool down, we do have to be careful that it's not going to blast through each of those legs. We want to make sure that our feed and retract planes are still above the part. So lead in, lead out, I'm going to shrink this down quite a bit, so maybe 30 thousandths and a radius of 30 thousandths. I think it probably should stay with the 90-degree arc depending on where it picks these up, so that it has a smooth blend. No depth cuts, no breakthrough, linking parameters, and the feed plane. We'll see what it does. So if I were to switch this to incremental, or we pick the top of the stock, we'll see if it lets it, so it didn't grab anything. Oh, got 0.75. Let's go to minus 0.625, because I'm not sure where that number, still not sure where that number is originating. And it looks okay on the depth since we're coming back from our zeros. So just have to be careful with those incrementals. I think better in the absolutes. I'll use the incrementals where they're appropriate. All right, so the 1/4 inch tool comes in. That sets our pockets, roughs and finishes the pockets. Let's go to the chamfer. And so for our chaining, I'm always a little confused whether I should pick the top or the bottom. Let's go with the bottom, and we'll accept, and we'll see what we get as a result. So the tool goes to select library. Jumped right into our filter. So filter would be for the chamfer mill. We'll go to 1/2 inch. And spindle speed 2000 RPM. Feed rate can be about 10, and we'll stay with 10. Rapid retract. Set up our chamfer. Cut parameters. We can leave it in where. This is going to be a 2D chamfer. So chamfer width, let's start off with zeros and see what that gives us. And nothing to leave on the wall, nothing to leave on the floor. Lead in and lead out, 100 thousandths, 45 degrees, looks okay. And then the linking parameters, we selected the bottom, so hopefully that'll pick up the incremental, top of stock at 0, and absolutes. Alright, so let's see what we get. Alright, so I'm going to turn off the pockets, I'm going to turn off the display on that last contour. And if we go to Alt-1, well, Alt-3 is trying to get to, let's see, the bottom. It's trying to get to where, there it is, and kind of see the lead in. So if we come down, that would be the point of the chamfer mill, and then the 45 degrees. So we're not quite to depth yet. And the parameters then, let's switch it over to incremental. 0.75 would take it right to depth. So on the cut parameters, let's give it a bottom offset of minus 0.125. Oh, it has to be positive, 0.125. And we'll set it, regenerate 30 toolpath. We come off that at 45. We're still a little ways from the part. So my other option on the offset would be to go back to 0. Let's look at 1/8 of an inch on the chamfer width and regenerate the dirty operation so we get to depth. But now my 45 degrees where it's coming off that center is going to blast through the part. So we're looking for a combination that sets it over and down. So if I go 50 thousandths and the chamfer width of 50 thousandths and regenerate, and we'll go back to the Alt-6 and we'll see it a little bit better. So if I come off of that point, we're still a little bit, probably gouging just a little bit. So one of the things I would look at doing is raising this tool up on its touch off, taking the cut and then adjusting it at the control for depth if I needed to. Alright, so chamfer width at 50, let's see if the bottom at 25 gets us a little closer. So I don't think that quite went to the way that I wanted it. Alright, so if I adjust those numbers, and like I said, I'm just kind of going off of eyeballing those parameters. Okay, so we reverse it. Alright, so if that gets me close, then I can also adjust the wear with compensation so that as it's ramping in, it's going to take a little bit more material or take a little bit less material when we adjust for size. So pretty much just massaging that in. And if we go to the point, if we go to the top, then we're offsetting a little bit different and just kind of reacting to what those tooltips look like. So let's go ahead and save this, since I certainly wouldn't want to do it again. Mill toolpath, we're going to go with the drill for the 2 holes. So if you want to leave this at the 1/4 inch size, that's fine. If we go to a drill and tap, I'm kind of looking for that center point. So I can also go to entities, and if we pick the circle and pick the circle, then I can end the selection. It grabbed 1 point. So let's go, and it still just has the 1 point. So I'm not sure what I just told it there. Entities aren't picking that one, so let's make sure we get our center point. Escape when finished. So let's see what that gives us on the point geometry. So we have, well, we still have just one point. All right, so since we're here, we'll add a point. And escape. And let's go ahead and see what, no, still didn't pick that one up. All right, so I missed something there. Nope, definitely didn't want that one. Alright, so point 1, that one's still good. Well, let's just go ahead and tell it to reselect all. If we go to automatic, nope, entities, that one highlights, and selection. And it's still picking up 1. Well, it's certainly picking it, but it's not happy with it, so let's delete the points one more time. Escape to quit. Okay, now I'm just getting button happy. Okay, so if we add, let's see if we can pick those up. I'm going to zoom up on it so I can see it. I see the point highlight in the center. Point highlights in the center. Escape. I'm not sure why it doesn't like that one all of a sudden. Still not giving it to me. Alright, so go over to automatic or arcgeometry. No, not highlighting it in selection. Still only one point to find. Alright, so let's get it set up and then we'll come back and analyze why it's only giving me the one. So right now we're showing as a tap. I'm going to switch that over to the drill. We're looking for a number 7 drill. And we'll accept it. Go 3800 at 11. Alright, so about 1.5 per revolution, 200 on the surface feet per minute. It's pretty close. So drill. And nothing on the stock. Cut parameters. This is going to be a peck drill. Let's go 50 thousandths on each peck. And then want to pick up for the depth. So I'm just going to switch over to absolute, and to the depth. We go to pick our geometry and rotate over. Pick the whole bottom. And we're going to see where that goes this time. Alright, so that might be the issue. My C-plane left side and my tool plane are on the left side. So somewhere I got those. Yep, I sure did right there. So let's go ahead and delete that. And we're going to go over to the levels. And make sure our tool plane is in the top. I'm sorry, into the planes, and we'll make sure that the top. Alright, so didn't catch that earlier. Now that should help with the selection a little bit. Mill toolpath, drill, and the entities, make sure that we're still in the top. And in the selection, now I can see the points. Okay, well, that would be one thing to watch out for. We are with tool number 4, number 7 drill. I didn't keep my numbers. cut parameters, drill, peck drill. Said we're going to do 50 thousandths, and then the linking parameters. So that was why the depth was weird. So let's see if it'll come back to the whole location. So minus 0.75. And then we're going to turn on tip comp and give it an extra 30 thousandths so that it breaks completely through. And we'll accept. Alright, so those look a lot better. And let's grab both of those and turn off the display. Alright, so next drill will be to tap. And we should be able to pick the last entities. Nope, 0 points defined, so let's go back to entities. And we're still in top and top, so now I'm going to be paranoid about that one if it shifts on me again. Alright, so select library tool, we go into the filter. This time we're going to turn the drills off, turn the taps on, and we're going to be a 1/4-20. So this becomes the tap. I'm going to put it to 200, so that makes my feed rate 10. And we can run that a little bit faster, but we'll see how it does. All right, so nothing on the stock, cut parameters, we're switching over to a tap. Nothing really to set there. The linking parameters, we're going to go absolute, absolute, and an absolute. And until I'm sure what we're getting here, I'm going to go with minus 0.5 and no tip comp. Alright, so that should give me my geometry for, see if I missed anything. We'll run the simulation. So we verify. I'm just going to let it run through its speed. A little bit faster, all those cuts. Alright, so let's see, feed time an hour. We do have some geometry, and there are those retracts that we needed to watch out for when we were doing the high speed. At least I think it was the high speed, so I actually just wanted to display that one. And no, I don't see it going through. So let's take a look at the contour, the finish pass. So since it wasn't that one, that leaves the pockets. Yep, there it is. So missed that little line segments. We'll double click. We'll go back into our linking parameters. Alright, so the feed plane at 200 thousandths. We'll switch that back to absolute. Top of stock can still be at a negative number. And when we regenerate the dirty operation, we want to make sure that it's coming up and over, jumping over those cogs. Alright, so one more save. Now, if I was switching to a different machine or to a lathe or something else to do the backside, we would take that into account. Since I just need to be able to post a separate group, we're going to come up to the machine group and see if we can create a new toolpath group, and that'll add it outside of toolpath group 1. So this could be setup 1, and if I double click, setup 1 and the top, and then this toolpath group 2 can be setup 2 and the bottom. Alright, so before we get going into that, we need to create a plane. And so this is going to be create a new plane from geometry, from solid face, from the graphics view, from entity normal, or dynamic. So let's go with the geometry. Set construction plane by geometry. Alright, so if I pick the lines, then that gives us in relation to our stock. So if I go to the next, that's setting my coordinate system along X and along Y, which looks okay, so we'll hit the check mark. And then my choice, if I'm going to sweep this, or depending on how I'm going to hold this, since it's a round part, we could do the vertical 3-jaw or a fixture soft jaw to grip this. I would still probably end up sweeping this outside loop at some point. So I'm going to shift to 2 inches, and then to -2 inches, and then our stock becomes minus 1.875, so that 0 will be the top of the part. That'll help me a little bit on the coordinate system, the work coordinate system, and the at the machine. And let's just say I want this to be a G55 coordinate system, so we'll switch over to 1 and go ahead and accept. Alright, so I think we're good on those. Alright, so our facing operation, those little tabs that are left in the corners, we're just going to bandsaw those off, so I'll have kind of a rough surface, but I should be able to start at the outside and work my way in. Thing with the acrylic is we have a little bit of chipping, fracturing to be concerned with along this leading edge, so we'll have to address that accordingly. Hopefully the 10,000ths that we went past will be enough that it won't break out. So our facing operation, I kind of still like that that dynamic. And if I go with the loop, I'm picking the outside edge, and we can accept. And right now my C-plane and my tool plane are still in the top, so let me kick that out real quick. And no, don't keep the operation, because after I set all of that, then the plane needs to be the current and the current. Alright, so let's right click and rename. Alright, one more trip back to the toolpath, facing operation, pick the edge, accept, and plane and plane. Alright, so tool goes back to the tool number 1. Cut parameters, maximum step over 50%, approach distance 50%, 0.25, no depth cuts. Linking parameters, we're staying in absolutes. Top of stock is 1/8 inch, just so that we are additive on those numbers. And that gives me my dynamic, start at the outside, feed in, remove that material. Right, so we're going to turn the display off, and then I will start up the high speed. We'll stay with the dynamic mill. Machining region is going to be the interior, since we are removing all of that material, and accept. And then this is going to be from staying inside, not from outside. And there's no avoidance containment regions. So I guess the explanation, the way that I see it, is if our machining region stayed all of this material, and we could use a containment region to say just this interior pocket. That's kind of counterintuitive in this case. We can experiment with it, but I think just setting the machine region, staying inside, is going to be better. All right, 1/2 inch tool, 4,000 RPM. We go to the cut parameters and step over at 50 thousandths, and our back feed rate at 40. Stock to leave on walls 10 thousandths. All looks good from the previous. Helix radius clearance, keeping those parameters. Absolute, and then the depth. We'll search along that edge. I think it found something, went to absolute. No. Well, let's see, this is the high speed, so alright, well, as long as it gives me a point, so -1 inch. And we'll go ahead and accept. And give it a chance to calculate all those toolpaths. So downside to this is going to be a lot of little points, fairly large program when we're done. Okay, last operation, we'll go to the high speed, and we're going to, we're going to just stay with the standard contour, pick the bottom edge, and accept. Tool stays with, we're going to go back to the 1/2 inch tool. And this will be the finish. I don't think I did that on the other two, but we'll have to catch up to that. Cut parameters is in where, no chamfer, so it that was our last contour. Brought those parameters over. And lead in, lead out, 100 thousandths, 45 degrees. Linking parameters, 0.25, absolute minus 1 inch. If I went too incremental on this one, I said I still kind of trust the contours to figure that out. The high speed doesn't seem like it's doing a very good job of calculating those locations. All right, so our changes in the control definition and getting that set up, we're updating the post. We will come back over. I'll need to select. We're going to just generate for the setup 2. And when I post the code, it's going to ask me where I want to save, or actually it's warning me saying that all of these operations are missing. Do I want to post everything? No, I'm only posting that segment. And we're going to give it a setup 2. And it launches the Code Expert. Alright, so looking through our geometry, we're going to have to run one more simulation here. So in this post, there's a C, which would be rotation about the Z-axis, which is an interesting number. It only returns it to 0, so it's not like it's doing anything, but all of those dynamic, all that dynamic mill generates a ton of code. Alright, so right now there's no end numbers, so in the control definition, when I turn those off, that is working. If we're generating this much code, I don't need 4 additional characters at the beginning of each line, and it's not really going to help me that much anyway. Does the finish, so we're seeing each of the definitions where I put those comments in, those are showing up. And G41 going to depth, feeding in, feeding out, and then returning. Typically with G91, G28, Z0, I would bring it forward in Y, but I wouldn't do the X, and I don't need the C. So that would be just something to check with the control, make sure it's working. Or we get all of our, see if there's a better post. All right, so if we verify, let's just check, and we're not going to see it as it's finished. So it faces down, ramps in, and again, all of this is pretty much gone from previous cut. And we're climb cutting out, and a lot of calculations. So that would be the other thing with all of those individual XY points. If we don't have the machine look ahead, we're not going to be able to run much faster than 20 or 30 inches a minute before the control starts losing its mind and dithering. Kind of a staggered start and stop while it consumes that code. So without the look ahead, the high speed is nice for the engagement, but we're maybe not going to be able to take a full advantage of it. Let's see if we can speed that up a little bit and jump to the end. So a lot of calculation even on the graphics to do the simulation. All right, again, so the outside is already generated. We don't have to do anything there. We just have to center this part so that we can pick up those contour, that rough and that contour. All right, so if I come back to set up 1 and do the verify. A little faster than probably what we need, but we'll check, mainly looking for that 1/4 inch isn't blasting through my part, and the little towers are mostly removed, so we've got a good portion of that geometry. Alright, so the thing to watch out for is on our planes, if I need to come back up here and add an additional operation, maybe I want to chamfer around this edge, do a little edge break, I need to make sure in the planes that I've switched back to the top, WCS, the construction, and the tool plane are all current. And then I can bring the insertion arrow up and add operations back into the top. And then I come back, and if I need to add something to the bottom, then we need to go back into the planes. And we're going to make sure that all of those are current. All right, so there's a little bit of management in those, making sure that we're making the right approach and from the correct direction. All right, that should do it.